From the dawn of man, indigenous people from every corner of the globe have spoken of things that have now been discounted as myth or legend. Things they saw, lived alongside by, were looked upon as deities or worshipped by gods. Things that present-day man refer to as entities, spirits, demons, cryptid creatures, extraterrestrials, and much more. But sadly, modern man, science and society has discounted what our ancestors spoke of as legend and myths. But there are those of us that know what the ancient ones spoke of is the truth. Those of us who are obsessed with finding out the truth. This search for answers brings us into the world of the unknown and unexplained. It brings us on the trail, in search of living legends. Please join us tonight in another part of our journey to find these answers and bring the truth out into the light. Welcome and thank you for listening.
Welcome everyone to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. I'm your host Jeremiah Fountain, and Nick Valente, my partner and co-host, he is dealing with something right now. He should be hopping on in a little while. It's going to be we're in season 7. It just blows my mind. It seems like we just started the show yesterday. Season 7, episode, I believe this is episode 3. We had a great guest for you tonight. A friend of mine lives not too far away from me. I'm up here in the Adirondack, St. Lawrence Valley region. He's not too far from me, but I'll let him tell you more and more about that. I want to introduce you to Mr. John Tatro. John, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, Jeremiah. How you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Now, John, can you, I know the audience is probably interested to hear a little bit about yourself. You got a pretty cool resume. Would you mind going over that real quick?
Sure. Graduated high school back in '82. Went from there into the Marine Corps. Did 4 years in the Marine Corps. Combat vet. Beirut, Lebanon, 1983. I got out of the Corps in '86. Did a few odd jobs here and there. Got hired as a police officer up in a small village up in the Adirondack Mountains. And I went from there to a state corrections where I worked for 32 years and 57 days. I retired back in 2020, back in October, and been retired ever since.
Good. Must be feel good to be retired, huh?
Well, kind of. Not like I thought it'd be, but
You're right.
yeah.
John, you got a pretty interesting case. I talk about this case, to people all the time. I don't mention your name unless you give me permission, obviously, like you did tonight. But it's a pretty interesting case. Just to give you guys a little background on John's situation, he's I'll let you get into that more, John, but it has to do with the family of Sasquatch. Now,
Okay.
John, when did you start noticing that things were kind of off on your property? First of all, how big is your property? And general location. You don't have to give me an exact town. Just general.
It's I'm fine with that. It's an 87-acre farm. I live not about a mile away from the St. Lawrence River, and I've got the Grass River about 300 yards on the other side of my house.
Right.
A lot of deer, a lot of everything out here. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so there's a lot of prey animals, a lot of nutrition,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of food.
Yeah. I'm a hunter. I've hunted ever since I was like 9 years old. My father used to take me up into the Adirondack Mountains when I lived back in the town where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
I've hunted since I was 9, like I said, and my father's dragged me all over the place up in the Adirondacks. We moved here back in 2002, and there's a lot of deer out here, so I, naturally started hunting and all that good stuff. But when I'd be out in the woods with my gun, I'd hear this like wood on wood tapping. Sometimes it was loud, sometimes it was soft, but it was like a, pop, 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 pop
Right.
on the trees. And at first I was thinking it was like a plated woodpecker. And they never seemed to be too far away from me or me and my kids there when we're out back hunting. And they just kept it up off and on, not all the time, but it was pretty steady. Every time I'd go outside with a gun or, headed into the woods. Back in 2012, I jumped on my tractor and I grabbed my rifle. And actually, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
Halloween of 2012. It was the day after. Well, Halloween 2012. Getting ready to take the kids out trick or treating. They're younger, and I looked out my back sliding doors. I saw a couple of deer running across my back field there, so I grabbed the gun, went outside. Noticed the last deer was a buck, so I took an aim shot. Didn't realize if I hit him or not. He kicked his feet up and went back into the tag alders. And I jumped on the four-wheeler really quick, went out, looked around for blood. Didn't see any. Went around through the swamp on the left-hand side of my property. Came out on the far back side of it and came back to the house. Took the kids out trick-or-treating that night, came back. Got up around, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and went out and sat in my tree stand just past where I shot this buck the night before. I thought I shot him. And I'm sitting in my tree stand, and I hear the loudest roar, yell, whatever you want to call it, 4 times, one right after the other. And the only thing I could picture was like a cross between a lion and a bear, and it seemed like it was as loud as like an African elephant, like you're standing right in front of it,
Right.
or a set of speakers at a concert, and it was so loud that my inside shook, my chest and my lungs and guts. It was like vibrating. And I thought for myself, I said, what in the hell was that? I've never experienced that before. And sat there for a second, and then I heard this coy dog in the left side of my swamp as I'm looking towards my back field. Started yipping and yapping coming out of the swamp. It was a good-sized one. And he came across the field, headed right for that noise where the scream came from. The scream was right on the backside of my property. I couldn't see what made the noise.
Right.
But I figured it was near the stone wall between me and the neighbors. And the coy dog went right straight for the noise, got about 50, 60 feet, I think, or 70 feet away from where the noise was, and just stopped right in the middle of the field and was sitting there growling. Its hair was up. I brought my gun up. I'm looking at the coy dog through the scope. Its hair was standing on end, showing its teeth, and had this growl growling at whatever it was. And I kind of forgot about the scream, there's a coy dog, and he kills fawns in the springtime, and everything else that's not, can't defend itself. So I shot the coy dog, and he went down. I waited a little bit, got down out of my tree stand, walked over to where I shot the deer the night before. Sun had come up, and I started walking what I thought, the trail that he might have taken. Didn't see any hair, no blood, no nothing. When I came around the back, there's a little creek that runs through that part of the property, and there was a buck laying on his side right in the water. and the whole top half of them was shredded right to the bone. Everything was picked clean off them.
Oh my God!
The internal organs were removed, and I'm sitting there looking at where the deer was in relation to the where the coy dog came out, and I said, "Well, this is pretty close. He must have come out of here. He must have been feeding on the deer or something." So went out to the field, and sure enough, that's where I saw the dog come out of the woods, and kind of, it's one of those things that I've hunted so much that I've never seen or heard anything make that kind of noise, and to get that reaction out of that coy dog. It was a big male coy dog, by the way.
Yeah.
And I never even heard of them reacting to a scream like that, or anything actually.
Yeah.
It was just, the whole thing was weird. Later that year, might have been a month or so, I was on my tractor with my gun, 30-06. I was going to go out back and do an late afternoon hunt. And I'm driving down the hedgerow right in the center of my property. I break over this little bit of a hill, and I look right to where the stone wall was, where the neighbor's property line is. And I saw what I thought was a person standing there next to a tree. Because, I saw a head, shoulder, arms hanging down to the sides, and a torso. And as I get closer, I'm thinking it's probably the neighbor or one of his brothers hunting. And I raised my right hand and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm sitting there watching this, and as I'm getting closer, it's getting bigger. And this thing did not flinch. It didn't raise its hand like, oh, it's that effing Tatro, or, it's that effing neighbor.
Yeah.
It's just like a statue. I mean, nothing. And I got close enough to where I started there's stuff coming off the shoulders and on the inside of the torso, all over the arms and the head, and the neck area. And I noticed two discolored spots of something up on its left shoulder, probably about the size of, about the size of your thumb, a little bit wider in two different spots. And I'm thinking, this guy's wearing a ghillie suit, until I was within 30 feet of this thing. Then it all of a sudden, it's like somebody kicked you in the stomach and said, "Hey, this is not what it's supposed to be. This ain't supposed to be."
Right.
And this being, I'm going to call him a being.
Okay.
I'm like, this thing had to have been 8 foot tall and roughly about 800 pounds, if I had to guess.
Ooh.
And I'm sitting there watching him. It was a male. It was no, wasn't a female or anything. I could tell it was a male.
Right.
The shoulders were probably 4.5 foot wide. And just the size of it would kind of, your brain is going, "Oh my God, this thing is,
Yeah.
I couldn't see no eyes, and the muscle, what do they call those muscles between your neck, on your neck here, and your shoulders?
Your
Trapezoid. Yeah. Yeah. There was no neck. It was like solid muscle from the ear down to the shoulder on both sides. I mean, it was unbelievably thick, and the hands, as I got right broadside of this thing, the hands were down by the knees with the knuckles facing forward to me, and the size of the hands were almost looked like they're about the size of a tennis racket. The palms and the fingers. But this was the most athletic built anything I've ever seen in my life. It's like this thing could, I don't know. It definitely would look dangerous,
Sure.
And yeah, and and for one brief second, something in my mind goes, "You got your gun. You could put one of these down and put everything to rest, with it." And something, I just put a brand new scope on my gun too. It was a 6-24 by 50, 52 or whatever it was. And I'm thinking, if I take this gun and level it at that thing, the only thing I'm going to see is fur, and you don't, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to wound this thing because he's going to come over that thing, flip my tractor, and probably throw me to the next county. But, something inside of me, my stomach, all of a sudden I started getting sick to my stomach, right in my stomach. Something's like, "You don't need to be here. Go home."
Yeah.
And I'm watching this thing over my shoulder, making sure it's not coming over that stone wall at me. And I just watched him as I drove away. So I watched this thing for probably 30, 45 seconds straight.
That's a long time to watch one of these things.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you what, it's my whole world. I mean, everything I believed in changed at that second.
Sure.
As soon as I realized what I was looking at,
Yeah.
I almost started looking around for the leprechaun and the unicorn that he came in there with, but freaking, I'm going to tell you the truth. I almost wish to God I never seen this thing.
Yeah, it definitely changes your life. You can't unsee it.
Nope, you can't. And every time I go outside, I'm driving, and there's any kind of woods or fields or anything, which there's a lot of out here. You're constantly scanning for them to see another one.
Always.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's almost like a sickness.
It is, and it's like an necessity.
Yep.
It really is.
And oh yeah. And I came back to the house, and unfortunately, that wasn't my only encounter.
Right.
I've had a few others.
That's all right. Let's hear about them.
Yeah. I wrote this other group that's into the Sasquatch Bigfoot thing.
Yep.
And they sent a couple of researchers down, one from New Jersey and one from out west.
Okay.
They came up here, and actually, after I typed my little thing into them, a guy called me within a couple, 3 days, I think.
Right.
And he interviewed me over the phone, and he was on the phone with me for a good 2 hours.
Yeah.
And he's asking questions about everything around me. I mean, he knew where everything is around me, and the rivers and the roads, and I'm like, "Have you been up here or something?" He goes, "Yeah, we've been up there twice. There's a guy that lives about a mile from you who's experiencing the same thing, has seen the same things, and we've gotten cast footprints from behind his property."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they got I think a 19-inch cast footprint, and there was a smaller one with it in the sand. It was like a 9-inch, I think. So it must have been a juvenile or, smaller one.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's big. 19 inches. Wow.
Yeah, I never even knew this guy that lives about a mile away from me as a crow flies. He lives closer to the St. Lawrence River, and he lives right on the edge of one of the bigger swamps around here.
Mm-hmm.
And the researchers said, "Okay, we're gonna try to come up and maybe like July 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that." And I said, "Yeah, fine." But so the two researchers, and he asked, he goes, "Do you care if I let your neighbor come with us?" I said, "No, I want to see him. I want to, introduce him, get introduced to him and whatever." So they came up, I think there was a day later. It was like July 4th, July 5th. And they got here in the early afternoon. I took them out back, showed them a few spots here and there. my uncle had died 4 days prior, and they were going to have a funeral in Malone. So I couldn't be there that afternoon. I had to run into Malone for a wake.
Right.
So I was in Malone at the family gathering, and these guys had come out here and with the other homeowner. So there's 3 of them out back. And I got home. The guy called me on the phone and said, "Hey, you home?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "Come on back out here. Don't bring it. If you got a flashlight, bring it, but don't turn it on. Don't use it. Just come on right up. We're on your back line." I said, "Okay." I went out there, and one of the homeowners and one of the researchers was right on the stone wall where I had seen that thing. The other guy was walking on the edge of the hayfield back and forth, and he had an electronic device in his hand. I think it was a recorder. When I got back there, the 2 guys, he said, and I asked him, I said, "Well, has anything happened? You guys got anything at all?" He goes, "Yeah, we did a tree knock when we first got out here and it was dark." He said, "We got 3 different tree knocks from 3 different locations. One down to our left, down in the swamp where the creek is. One out north of you on the neighbor's property, and one out to the back right on your other side of your property. One right after the other."
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I wasn't there. I didn't hear them, But then they said that something had whistled at them from the woods.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." And I went to see the other researcher that was walking back and forth in the field, and he goes, "Yeah, there's something inside the tree line back. I don't know how far back, but he goes, it's following me in this when I go up and down." He said, "It's every time I move it, this thing is moving." And he's got the recorder out. He recorded all the noises and stuff. Said he could hear some twigs and stuff snapping. Nothing major, but
yeah.
And then he asked me. He goes, "Excuse me. Do you want to take a walk in there, do like a little deer drive to us?" And I've been in there before, and it was some of the thickest, nastiest stuff I've ever seen. I've been in some training in the Marine Corps where this stuff you could barely get through it. With thorn apples and the vines and stickers and all the other stuff in there. It was bad, really bad. And I said, "Well, I really don't want it because it's bad in there." So he made up a plan. He said, "Let's go to the corner of your property. We'll put the other guy and the other guy on the edge overwatching this overgrown meadow that's connected to my property. It's a 100-acre chunk of property, and there's a little bit of a swamp in there." And they had a thermal camera, they had listening devices and stuff like that, or parabolic dishes, and they were set up on the thing. And me and the head researcher, we got to the corner of my property, and we headed north, right directly north, down this old tractor trail. And the grass was just above your waist. And we had a full moon out that night, so nobody was using flashlights, and you could see fairly well, up close stuff. So we went down this trail, I want to say 30, 40 yards, and we stopped and we turned because we were going to go into that chunk of property a little bit. As soon as we stopped and turned, we had something throw a rock at us from that chunk of woods. and it was about 12 o'clock, 12:30 at night. And this rock hit a tree, bounced off, hit another tree, and landed somewhere within 30 feet of us. And I'll tell you what, right then my brain put it together. To pick up and throw a rock, you have to have an opposable thumb. You've got to be pretty good at it too.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, they're very accurate with where they. I've had boulders thrown at me in North Carolina, and they're very accurate where they put them. They can put them about a foot in front of your feet, from 80 yards away. It's crazy.
Yep, they're extremely accurate. But so we stopped for a minute, And we're both looking at each other, and he goes, I guess we better not go in there. I said, all right. And he goes, I wonder if they like grapefruit. He pulled a grapefruit out of some pack, got a little like fanny pack on or something, and pulls it out, and he fires the grapefruit right back into the woods. And I asked him, I said, you want me to see if I can find a rock and throw that back? He goes, no, we don't want to get into a rock fight with these things. So I said, okay. So he
Probably a
thought,
wise decision not to.
oh, yeah. Yep. You catch one of these things on a bad day, you'll be out of milk carton.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, John. Like, I didn't mean to cut you off, but a lot of these people, you know, like, I think there's different types of these things. I think some are mild tempered, some can be nasty. You know, there's a lot of people out there that think these things are all cute and cuddly and want to play the flute with you around the fire. You know, which isn't the case. You know, some of them can be nasty.
Yeah. So he goes, let's figure out, let's go around the other way. We'll head to the east and come around this knoll and come out on the backside of the overgrown meadow where these other two guys are watching. I said, all right, we'll go over there. So we started going east, and with all the vines and stuff and the thorn apples, I had on a really good mosquito head net. It came right off my head, and I'm like, well, I'm not turning my light on to look for that, so kind of just forgot about it. We continued on our journey, come out on the backside of that meadow, and we met up with those other guys, and nobody had heard or seen anything, you know, that you conclusive to any kind of movement in there. So they stuck around for a couple, 2-3 days, left their recorders out, left their thermal cameras and stuff, just trying to catch some stuff. They did catch audio that, that's what I forgot. When I first, earlier in the night when I first got there, and those guys, and they said about the tree knocking, they said there's might be two of these things down in that little swamp, and they're talking back and forth. He goes, you can't understand it, but it's like a mumbling kind of, you know,
like a jibber
if you've
jabber.
ever heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said they got that on audio, but they couldn't, you know, definitively say this is this and whatever. But yeah. Well, like I said, they stuck around for 2-3 days. Then they ended up having to go back. The head guy goes, hey, why don't you put some food up in some trees and put a game camera out and see if you can get a picture of anything coming through, you know, taking it and whatever. And I started that, standing on top of a four-wheeler rack and reaching as high as I can, putting some food up on a tree with one camera. And 2 separate times I had the food was all cleaned out. The camera would fire off anywhere from 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and the food would be gone, and you're not seeing anything on the camera at all.
Yeah, which is interesting. That's so interesting. I've had that happen several times to me, where the camera goes off, but it's not catching anything.
Right.
It's weird.
That shows you how fast these things are.
Fast and smart. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think? Let me ask you a question. Do you think they know when you put if they're watching you put a camera out on a tree? Do you think they know that you're putting it out for their sake?
Oh yeah. I
do too.
I think that if you move a twig in the woods, they're going to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You're not going to out sneak these things. You're not going to outsmart them.
No.
If you're in the woods, they're going to know it if they're there. You know.
Yeah.
But I did that twice, and the food disappeared, and I called the head guy up. I said, look, the food's disappearing. My camera's going off, but I'm not catching anything on the pictures. He goes, well, try taping the food to the tree, and if you got more cameras, set them up in a triangle or, you know, around pointing at each other, so cover all your angles. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I think it was my 3rd or 4th trip out there. My daughter was 9 and my son was 5. And I went out and checked the tree. Most of the food was gone. I pulled all 3 SD cards out of the cameras. I had them in the shape of a triangle around this tree. I went back to the house, downloaded, took a quick look at all the pictures. Didn't see nothing on them. Went back, I hung up some more food, and I'm sitting there reprogramming the cameras, make sure they're working correct.
Mm-hmm.
I set up 2 of them, and I'm sitting. My kids are off playing probably 25, 30 feet away from me. And I'm sitting there messing with a 3rd camera, and all of a sudden, one of these things screamed at us from probably about 60, 70 yards away from us in the woods. And I'll tell you what, this is all I could do was hang my head and say to myself, "Oh my God, I'm going to die."
Yeah.
That's it. The sound goes right through the center of your body.
Goes right through you, yeah.
And it's just, for the people that, when it first happens to you, it's going to be the most frightening thing in the world you'll ever experience.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then my parenting kicked in and said, hey, stupid, you got 2 kids here. So I looked for my kids, and they were both frozen, and they're looking in the woods towards where the stream came from. I yelled at them, "Come on, guys, we got to go now." So they come running back, and I think my son had a little bit of tears in his eye. He was so scared.
No,
little guy. But, and I closed that camera up, the 3rd camera I was working on, and I put that camera at about 7 foot tall, up as far as I could reach. And went back to the house. I said, okay, I'm going to stay out of there, and I ain't bringing the kids with me next time. So I went the very next day, go in there, and pulled all 3 SD cards. And on that last camera that I put up at 7 foot tall, I caught a picture of what looks like a right arm and right bicep just past the elbows, and it's covered with hair.
Yes, you sent me a copy of that.
Yep.
That's a good shot, because it's not too high up there for it to be anything else. Not a bear.
No.
You know?
And I've never seen a bear here.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never seen a bear. I've never seen a bear track. I've never even heard of my neighbors, there's been a bear here, there, whatever, but.
Right.
Let me see. After that, it was, I told my son, he was probably mid-20s at the time, early 20s. I told him about what was going on. And when I told him we got the rocks thrown at us from the woods, and, he kind of laughed it off. He goes, "Yeah, sure you did," and I said, "Okay, let's go." I said, "I'll show you exactly where it was." So we went out in the corner of the property. Both of us had rifles, and it was summertime. We went to, we walked across into the neighbor's lane and walked down that road a little bit, and all of a sudden, I'm looking down. I'm thinking, it's like a roadkill deer. The guts are wide open, and it stinks high heaven in there. It's one of the worst smells I've ever smelled.
Yeah.
It smells like a dead summertime roadkill animal.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around for it, and the smells seem to keep moving away from us as we're walking around looking for something on the ground, But that got my boy interested, and he went through my computer, because ever since we moved here, I've had game cameras out.
Yeah.
And he actually came across a picture of what appears to be 3 of them coming onto my land from the neighbor's thick stuff. Yeah, I didn't even know I had it.
Is that is that the one? I think you sent me a copy of a pretty good picture with a brown Bigfoot in the front and a red one in the back behind it. Is that the picture?
Yep. And you guys found the 3rd one that was further down away from those 2.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a good picture.
Yeah. It was definitely an eye opener,
Yeah.
There's not just one. There's a couple. If you got a couple, you probably got a family.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yep.
You know what's interesting is I always look in that picture we were just talking about, the brown one up in front. I don't know if you ever noticed, John, but she's carrying. I say she. I don't know why, out of habit, or my first experience was with a female, so I always say she. I don't know why, but
Yep.
anyway, um, it's like it's carrying something in its right hand. I don't know if you ever noticed that, and it looks like a piece of bone.
Yeah, it did. But I wish to God it was a better, wasn't so pixelated, because when I blow it up on my computer, it kind of pixelates it
Sure,
almost too much.
right.
But yeah, it does look like there is something in his hand.
It definitely, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Uh,
wild. Didn't you
yeah.
have didn't you have an ordeal? Something happened with your chickens?
Yeah. I I had I bought a bunch of chickens, like 20, 26, 27 from the local farm store here. I
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember how many years ago it was. It was right around the same time. And I got the chickens to the point where they were probably, I don't know, probably standing about a foot tall or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to put them in my horse barn with the stall door closed, and I left them in there a couple of days, and got up one morning. I'm sitting there watching TV, drinking coffee, and my son had already been up. He was 5, 6, 7. He comes in the house. He goes, "Dad, there's chickens laying down in the field in with the horses." I said, "What?" So I put my shoes on. I walk out there, and sure enough, there's like 4 or 5 dead chickens, one right in a row, headed right to the fence, headed for the woods.
Wow.
So yeah, and then I go back into the barn, and I've got 2 remaining surviving chickens. They're way up in the rafters of the barn,
Hiding.
and I'm like, holy shit! Something came in there and cleaned them all out, but
Yeah.
I think it was more than one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. That's
Yep.
what I was doing too. That's
Yep.
what I was doing. Wait. Something I was gonna ask you. Oh. Okay. Didn't you, or was it your daughters, that had an experience with one when they were playing out in the field? They looked. They looked to
Oh,
the wood line and they saw it.
there was actually both of my daughters. Uh, One was 16 and the other one was 9 at the time. They both had 4-wheelers,
Okay.
and I was working in my pole barn. Wasn't working at work. I was off on that day,
Right.
and I was sitting there working. It was probably 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My daughters both came back. They were out back driving around the edge of the field. Kids do when they get a
Mm-hmm.
4-wheeler or something with a motor,
Yep.
and they're out there and they come back to the house and they said, my youngest daughter goes, Dad, one of the cows is sitting on its butt. And at that time, I had 24, 25 Red Angus cattle. And she goes, one of the cows is sitting on its butt watching us drive 4-wheelers. And I said, what? And I said, are you sure? She goes, it's the same color as our cows, Dad. And I went and got the cows. I called for them like I was going to grain them. And I counted my cows up, said, no, it's not a cow.
Okay.
I came back to the, I don't know if you can hear that. It's raining here. I'm in my truck outside the house, but
Oh yeah. It's
is that
kind of
interfering?
rain here too.
Yeah. But I went out, jumped on the 4-wheeler, went out back and looked around. Didn't see nothing out of the normal. Fields were clear, edges of the woods were clear.
Right.
So kind of shrugged it off, went back. Next day I was out there doing the same thing. Girls jumped out on their 4-wheelers. And they came back just like they did the day before. And my youngest daughter, she comes up and she had a little bit of a scared look in her face. She goes, Dad, that thing's back again. And I said, what thing? He goes, we got closer to it, and it looked like a werewolf. And that kind of got my attention. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
really? You know, that's kind of a little bit of a scary thing for a kid that old to think that she saw something like that out sitting on the edge of the woods watching them.
Right. You know,
So,
I was thinking about that before we did the interview about how they said they saw a werewolf. Have you heard of the Dogman phenomenon?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Okay. It makes me wonder, would they, you think there's a possibility that there could have been one roaming around out there with the Sasquatches and they saw a Dogman to come in and tell you they saw a werewolf?
It's, well, this other thing happened. I was working in my pole barn again. Well, and it was after this. I got another add-on to that, the second four-wheeler story.
Yeah.
But let me see what I was doing here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was working in my pole barn, working on my tractor or something, and from the back corner of my property is probably 800-900 yards, roughly. Maybe 1,000, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
But, and I heard what seemed like a man scream. It was like a, ah, and I could hear it like as if the thing was standing right next to me. It was that loud. And then the sun was shining. It was like I said, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And all of a sudden there was a pack. It seemed like there was a pack of wolves fighting with something out back on the neighbor's property.
Oh,
and
my God.
The scream. Yeah. And I mean, it sounded like 7, 8, 9, 10 other dog type something were fighting with this one thing. And the scream turned, it started screaming a different type of scream. It was a higher pitch, drawn out.
Right.
While these things are barking and running around, you could tell they were canines.
Right.
But and this thing started running. It went from that corner, and I'll bet you you could hear it go for probably about almost half a mile through the woods. It was fighting its way all the way through there. And then the noises just stopped. And I sat there. I sat out in the field with a gun. Then I came back, got my truck. Had my son wanted to go out back and sit. So I said, all right. So we're sitting there, and we hear the screaming started again. Not the dogs, but that high-pitched, like a locator type scream.
Right.
It was coming back towards our property. And I brought him back to the house, got the wife, and said, hey, listen to this. And she heard 2 or 3 different screams coming back through the woods. We said, okay, I don't want to be out here whenever it gets up to behind the houses. So, yeah. On the other story with the girls in the 4-wheelers.
Yes.
Like I said, I jumped on the 4-wheeler, went out back, saw it, looked, and nothing was there again. But about a week later, I was at work, and the girls were out back driving around again. And my wife calls me at work. She goes, the girls just saw another one. I said, what? So what happened? And she said, by the little swampy area on the left-hand side with the creek, they came up to the swale grass from the swamp. They got within 40 feet of it. They said, my 16-year-old daughter described this. She said, Dad, it was about 10 foot tall, covered with gray hair, and it was swaying from side to side as it's watching us as we go by the first time. They saw it, and they got scared, and they came back, got their mother, and they were going to go try to get a picture of it. Right. By the time they came back, the thing was gone. So, but
wow,
that was kind of 10 foot tall, covered with gray hair, and
That's
the one I saw
big.
was all covered with black. What's that?
That's big. 10 feet.
Oh yeah.
That's just
Yep.
massive. Massive, massive.
She said it was. Yeah, she said it was way bigger than our ceilings in our house, and they're all 8 foot. She said no, it was quite a bit taller than in the ceilings. I said okay, and she said 10 foot, and I'm all right. But yeah, the wife has seen 2 of them, 2 separate times. She was driving into work one time, and she said one ran across the road. Probably, it seemed like it was about. She said it was about 5, maybe 6 foot tall, but it wasn't standing upright. She said it was like running like a chimpanzee would have, or a gorilla. Using its hands to help push it along. That was the first time she saw one when she went into work. The second time was later that year. She was coming home, and one road that connects to my road, she had the kids with her, both my daughters and my son, and they got to a certain point in the road where it comes up out of the ditch next to a pond, and she said this gray one jumped over the guardrail, the guardrail, and was like an Olympic sprinter running across the road, leaning forward. Said it almost got hit by a tractor trailer coming from the opposite direction. Missed it by about 2 feet, she said. The girl saw it, and she saw it. My son, I don't know, he's probably strapped in a car seat, but
wow.
Yeah, it was they're there. It's just unbelievable.
That was the first one she saw, John?
What's that?
That was the first one she saw, you said?
That she saw, yeah. That was the last time she's seen one.
Okay, I got you.
But, let me see. When I brought my kids to school one day, my son and my daughter, youngest daughter, they brought them to elementary school. I'm coming back down my road, and it was a bright blue, sunny day. I got on my stretch of my road, and right before probably quarter mile from my house, I'm looking down the road, and I see this black figure go across from the right side to the left side.
Okay.
It was tall, skinny, and black.
Yeah.
And it did not pick its feet up like it was walking or running. It almost looked like it was like on a rollerblade or something.
Right.
Kind of weird. It's like it glided across the road.
Sure.
And it was probably 7 foot tall, if I had to guess. Yeah. And it crossed on that road, the only place that it could cross without being seen by a house. That's the only spot on that whole road that a house can't see, what's crossing from one side to the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
This last fall, me and the wife we're going to go to the Watertown Mall.
Yep.
And it was a nice, bright blue sky day. I left the house, went out, took a right, went down to the new bridge, and I'm coming back up the hill to get on 37. And as soon as I crest the top of the hill, I saw one go from the left side of the road to the right side onto my property. And this one was brownish, but it was lanky. It was I don't know if they're having a hard time getting food or it was just a juvenile, but
yeah.
Wife didn't see it. She had her face in the phone doing something, and I'm like, hey, and I looked over, she missed it. So
yeah. Let me ask you a question, John. Have you ever sorry to cut you off, but have you ever experienced anything weird about when I've been out on investigations and had experiences? I've 90, and this goes for 92%. Nick and I figured this out. 92% of our witness reports that we've taken in the past, people
what?
have reported seeing things in the sky before, after, or during an encounter, like orbs, crafts,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yep.
You ever experienced
Right.
anything like that?
I've had a few things that I can't explain.
Right.
That, you know, along with this subject matter, you know, the Bigfoot. My son and me, we'd sit in my tree stand, and we'd see like these orbs.
Yeah.
They start out about ground level, 6 feet, 7 feet, and they slowly, they're moving from left to right, and they'd get up to the treetops and they're gone.
Yeah.
We witnessed that probably 3 times, and another friend of ours there, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was out here quite a few times, and we were out. I ended up, after all my stuff started, I went out and I bought a thermal scope, ATN Thor. It was a 4-power, just so like if something's out there, I'm going to see it.
Right.
But me and Doug were out here one night, and Dougie had the scope, and he spotted one standing inside the tree line, and he goes, "There's one," and he's sitting there looking at it, and he said something else, and he goes, "What in the hell is standing behind it?"
Oh.
And I'm like, "What?" Yeah. So he handed me the scope, and he pointed me in the right direction, and sure enough, I seen one inside the tree line. Had a physique like friggin' Lou Ferrigno. You could see you could see the heat signature on the scope.
Yeah.
You could look through the hair on this one, and you could see a 6-pack or 8-pack, whatever it had on its stomach. I mean, it was solid muscles, and it was huge.
Yeah.
But there was something standing behind it, and you figured this one was a good sized one, probably average of 7 foot.
7 foot, yeah.
There was something standing behind it that was about 2 feet taller.
Yeah.
And the shoulder width on that thing was sticking out past the shoulders on the Bigfoot.
Good God.
And the head was unbelievably large. Just a big source of heat, and you see it. And Dougie said, I gave the scope back to Dougie, and Dougie said, "Yeah, it blinked. It blinked its eyes or some shit."
Oh my God.
And I said, "Oh, yeah." And we kind of got something kind of. I think we ended our night shortly after that because it was just almost too much information to take in.
Too much, yeah. Too much, yeah.
We were sitting there, and so we ended the night. The next day, I went out on my tractor with my phone, and I'm driving around the edge of the woods, and I'm just looking, and I get to the very back part of the stone wall where I originally saw that one the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And deeper into the woods, I saw a gray head, shoulders, and arms on something that was like sticking out from some brush looking at me. And I put my camera on film. I put my camera on video.
Yeah.
And I got it on my camera. I could see it, and I hit record. My camera shut off after 1 second.
Uh-huh.
And I've got 1 second of video of something staring at me, and it's out there probably 65, 70 yards into the woods. But I believe it was. I don't want to bring the alien thing into it, but
no, but it's hard to deny.
I think.
What's that?
Yeah. I almost don't want to bring the alien part into it because it's going to confuse the, it's more, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's
I know what you mean.
now
Yeah,
yeah.
it's hard. But there's just so many. The longer, the more years I do this, and the more experiences I have, the weirder things
Yep.
get. I'm sure
It does.
The weirder
Yep.
it gets.
It does. Well, one night me and Dougie were out back and doing, listening for sounds and looking for these beings inside the tree line.
Mm-hmm.
We sat there and actually watched a large white, I don't know if it was an orb or some kind of craft. It came in from the west, and it slowly dropped in altitude, and it landed to the right into the woods, probably right to our right, probably 500 yards away, 600 yards away. And you couldn't see it when it landed, but that was just another night that was really strange.
Yeah, it is. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
it's bizarre. It's just that it's hard to, all these different types of phenomena seem to, in the later years I've experienced it. They all come together.
Yeah, some way they're connected.
They're connected.
I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's where they're correlated somehow.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're
neither.
Connected. I don't know if if there's. It's just strange seeing two phenomena occur almost simultaneously or within minutes of seeing one, then you're going to see the other.
Yeah.
It's going to take God knows how long before anybody can figure out what that is, what that correlation is.
Exactly. We don't even know if these things are yet, let alone what they're correlated to,
Yep.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to tell you, too, was earlier this spring, my son, he's 16 now. Well, he just turned 16.
Yeah.
He was out back driving around the fields with his Rottweiler.
Yeah.
And he went out there and he parked, and he's playing around with the dog, and all of a sudden the dog froze and looked over to the right where the little swamp is there with a creek.
Okay.
And my boy said he thought he saw a bear. There's something in there, all black.
Yeah.
But it was a good size, and he thought it was down on all fours. And he said that the dog started whimpering and wanted to get back into the side-by-side and get out of there.
Ooh.
And my boy said this thing stood up, and he thought it was a Bigfoot at first, but he said when this thing turned its face, showed him the side profile. I don't know if that thing was looking north or south or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But my boy said it looked like it had a wolf's head.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
See, I'm starting after all this stuff, the werewolves and stuff you're telling me, I'm starting to think that there's been a lot of Dogman sightings in our general area. I've taken some reports over the last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a few stories from guys that we know that have actually claimed the same thing, that they've seen these things.
Yes.
And like everything else, all you can do is take it in and, keep it in the back of your memory. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, John, I think we're running out of time, buddy. Did you have something else you want to throw in?
Well, I just wanted to throw in the one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It stems from when I lost my mosquito head net.
Oh yeah.
That was 2012.
Okay.
About 3 years later, I'm still feeding these things out back.
Yeah.
I've got putting food up, recorders, and I went there one night late, right just before dark. I put some food up, checked my recorder. I looked down at the base of the tree. This is probably 400 or 500 yards away from where I lost the mosquito head net.
Wow.
I looked down, and I reached down, and I pulled up. That mosquito head net was dropped at the base of that food tree.
Wow.
And that, just realizing that they brought that back to me,
Yeah.
was as eye-opening as when I first saw that one back in 2012.
Sure.
It's like these things have a sense of, trading or gifting.
Yes.
That it was like, okay, these things are very smart.
Yes.
And that's their way of acknowledging, thank you for the food, thank you for the apples,
Yep.
and all the other stuff. And that was quite the eye opener right there. It changed, changed the way I thought. But
that's incredible.
Yeah,
I appreciate you coming on, man.
No problem. No problem.
I really do. I always enjoy talking to you. I wish Nick could have made it on. He would have loved to have been here for this, but he had an emergency he had to deal with. But yeah, I should. I'll have this edited by. It'll be all edited by tomorrow. I'll send you a copy as soon as I get it all done with.
Okay.
All right, John, and just stick around for a minute after I stop the record button, if you can.
Sure.
Okay. And everybody, thank you for joining with John and myself tonight. It was a great conversation. John's always awesome when he comes on the show. Like I said, great guy, one of my personal friends. He's legit. So yeah, hopefully we can have him back on in the future. And stay tuned, because next week we've got a nice another great guest coming for you. And tune in, and we'll see you then. Everyone have a good night. Have a good night, John.
Yeah, you do. Thank you.